hey, I want to know what my God-given purpose is. And I go, great. What do you mean by that? Well, what does he want me to do with my life? What kind of future should I have? What kind of business should I open? How should I parent? And I go, hey, can we take those questions? And by the way, those are very good questions. Can we take those questions and lay them on the table just for a minute? Can we first talk about how you're living? Is your life a living sacrifice? Because if your life is not a living sacrifice, you might be potentially self-sabotaging the future that God has for you. Well, today we're going to continue a series that we've been on for a few weeks, and today is going to be the final installment of the series, but we've been on a series titled All In. All things. How you were like, what? Some of you were like, did we change it in the middle of it? Listen, all things, how God uses the wins, the wounds, and the waiting. And what we've been doing for the last several weeks is we've walked through the messy, the beautiful, and the complicated layers of life. Because life has a way of ebbing and flowing. And we said that there are moments in life where we have wins that fill us with joy. There are moments in life that we have wounds that create scars. We have moments in life where we feel like we face something that has broken us to a point where we might be, quote unquote, beyond repair. And we've talked about how sometimes the waiting shapes us in a certain way. And what we've said is that through all of that, the highlight reels, the open doors, the answered or unanswered prayer, God is still working. And the verse that we've used to anchor this series has been Romans 8:28. I hope that we all kind of somewhat have it loosely memorized by now. But I'd love for us to read it together. Romans 8:28 says this, and we know, come on, help me out, and we know that in all things God works for the good according to his purpose. And there are a few key things that I just want to point out very quickly about this verse before we move on. It says this, that God uses all things, everything. Anything that makes you, God uses. And for what purpose? He uses those things in a way that they work together. I want to highlight this because those two words, work together, is where we get the root English word synergy from. And what it means is this, is that God looks at all of the things that make up your life, all of the experiences, and he creates incredible synergy around those experiences so those experiences can lead to a greater, more defined purpose. I would hope that by now, since we've been working through this series, that by now that you have been able to identify the fingerprints of God's faithfulness throughout your life. Moments where you've been like, oh yeah, that was him. Oh yeah, that was him. Oh, I didn't see that coming. But yet that was him. And that inspires you. These are like small reminders that even when things didn't make sense, God was still working. The question that you and I have to face after we've unpacked promises and talked through stories is, where do we go from here? Like now that we've recognized God's goodness, meaning we know that he works all things, and now that we've recognized that he works all things for our good, and that he creates incredible synergy around those things, what do we do now? I've titled today's message, Now We Walk It Out. Because the only proper response for us after sitting back and evaluating the goodness of God is to respond to that by surrendering our very lives to him. I want to bring something to your attention. The Apostle Paul, who was a great missionary and a prolific writer, a leader among leaders, wrote the book of Romans. If you've never read the book of Romans, I would recommend you reading it. But let me just set the stage for a minute. The Apostle Paul takes 11 chapters of the book of Romans, chapters 1 through 11. You with me? The first 11 chapters. Talking about the faithfulness of God, the goodness of God, the mercy of God, the sovereignty of God. Let me pause there for a minute because that word sovereignty could be a big word. The word sovereignty means that nothing is outside of God's control, that he's not surprised by anything, that he doesn't bow his knee to anyone or anything. It means that he has supreme authority over all things and knows all things beginning to end. That's what it means. So the Apostle Paul spends 11 chapters talking about that. And then we get to Romans 12. I want us to read Romans 12:1 because Romans 12:1 is our response to God's working all things together for our good. Look at what it says in Romans chapter 12, verse 1. Let me see here. I want to read it from my Bible. Anybody have their Bibles this morning? Nothing sweeter than that sound, huh? Romans chapter 12, what verse did I say? 1. All right, we listening. Romans chapter 12, verse 1 says this. The first word is therefore. Therefore what? Because I spent 11 chapters talking to you about the faithfulness of God, the mercy of God, the grace of God, the sovereignty of God, how He pursues you endlessly. Therefore, because of those things, look what he says. I urge you, brothers and sisters, in view of God's mercy, to offer your bodies as living sacrifices, holy and pleasing to God. This is your true and proper worship. If you want to know what true and proper worship is, it is this. Live as a living sacrifice. Because here's what you and I have to get to the bottom of. If God works all things for my good, then my response should be to give Him all of me for His glory. The complicated part about Romans 12:1 is that you and I don't understand living sacrifices or sacrifices in the way that they understood it during biblical times. Because in biblical times, they really understood sacrifices. Many times what would happen is that a family would care for a lamb or care for a sacrifice so much so that they would do everything they could to ensure that when it was presented to the priest, it was perfect without spot or blemish. And they would come up to the priest and they would present the sacrifice, and the priest would take that sacrifice and lay it on the altar. But let me tell you this about sacrifices that were laid on the altar. Sacrifices that were laid on the altar, they weren't living. They were dead. I've read a few stories, a few accounts of how sacrifices took place in biblical times. And sometimes what they would do to a lamb, for example, in fear that it would run away from the place of sacrifice, is that they would tie a little rope around one of its legs and tie the other part of the rope to the altar. In case the lamb wanted to run away from the place of sacrifice, it was bound to be sacrificed. And what Paul is encouraging you and I to do is for us to not be dead sacrifices because we serve a living God, but to be living sacrifice as a response to God's unending mercy and grace towards you and I. And let me say this about being a living sacrifice. It's not a one and done thing. It's not a one and done thing. It's not a Sunday thing. And that's it. Being a living sacrifice, it is a present tense action. It means every day that I wake up, my mind is set to remain as a sacrifice in light of God's mercy and peace and pursuit of who I am. Here's one thing that we know, and this is a radical way of living, but it's the way of Jesus. Why is it so radical? Because sacrifices don't have the opportunity to make the choice to get back up. And neither do we. And God is asking you and I to be living sacrifices. The challenging thing for us is this. It's a question that we have to ask ourselves. Will we stay surrendered even when we want to take our lives back into our own hands? You know when those moments happen? When we say things like this, Lord, I've been coming to church every Sunday for the last 6 months. I've been praying. I'm not trying to make fun of anybody, okay? I've been praying. I've been believing. I started being a part of a group. You go down the list, whatever it is. And yet we look around and nothing has changed just yet. And in those moments we are tempted to say, wait a minute. Maybe I should pick back up the life that I once laid down. Because I laid it down and nothing is happening. Can I remind you this morning that even though you don't see it with your natural eyes, the God that you and I worship, He is still working. He's still working. Because He works all things for the good of those who love Him, who have been called according to His purpose. I mean, if God is working all things, then I want to give Him all of me. Don't you want to do the same? What does it mean to give God all of you? It means to give him your body. It means to give him your mind. It means to surrender your soul to his guidance. It means to use whatever giftings you have been given by him to honor him. It means that you take the future that sometimes keeps you up at night, that you plan for, cry about, wrestle with, and you take that future and you say, God, you know what? In your hands. That's what that means. You know what that's not? That's not just belief. That right there that I just described to you, that's worship in motion. It's worship in motion. That is walking it out. I want you to take a moment right now to take some personal inventory. And this is a question that I want you to ask yourself. Have I recognized what God has done for me? I mean, ask yourself this question right now. Have I recognized what God has done for me? How he has protected me, how he has guided me, how he has provided for me, how he has healed me, but I'm still withholding from him the proper response. I'm not trusting him as much as I know I should. I'm not giving him the amount of time I know I should. Or maybe there's an area that you're still having control over that God has asked you to surrender. I think that's a good question. I want to make a statement, but I want you to prepare for it because it's going to be a little strong. Okay, you ready for it? You holding your breath? Here it is. What if the greatest barrier to your next step isn't God's silence, but it's your resistance to what he's asking you to do? What if we're over here going, God, how long do I have to wait? And God's like, how long do I have to wait? How long do I have to wait? I've already asked you. I've already told you. I've already wooed you. I've already communicated to you. He's already proven that he's faithful, yes? He's already shown that he works all things, yes? The question now isn't, can God be trusted? The real question is, will we trust him with everything? I know I'm looking into the eyes of a church that wants to trust God with everything. I know I'm looking into the eyes of a church that acknowledges that God, in fact, has worked all things because you love him and you indeed have been called according to his purpose. I know that I'm looking into the eyes of a church that says, I'm not trying to surrender just on a Sunday. I'm not trying to surrender just during public moments. I want to surrender in my private life, in the real things, in the vulnerable things. I want to surrender. Look, this is where I get in trouble. I'm about to get in trouble right now. I don't really care. Here we go. Ready? There's a lot of believers, whole lot of people that you would walk up to right now and say, hey man, hypothetical, hey, do you know who Jesus is? And they go, oh yeah, I believe in Jesus. And you go, great. Tell me about your life. And you go, well, what you just described to me does not really reflect somebody that really believes. And here's what I'm trying to say. There's a lot of believers, but not a lot of living sacrifices. Not a lot of living sacrifices. And the Apostle Paul in Romans doesn't say this, therefore, live your life as a believer. That's not what he says. What he says is this, therefore, because God withheld nothing to pursue you, because he loves you unconditionally, because his mercy extends from generation to generation to generation. Therefore, it's not a matter of just belief. It's a matter of being a living sacrifice. That's the call. And for us, our proper response is to say yes. But it's not easy to say yes, is it? It's complicated. It's hard. It's hard because we have this thing right here. Ready? I'm going to show it to you right here. Look, ready? This thing right here. If we didn't have this, things would be a lot easier, but we got it. But it's okay. It's okay because in our weakness, his strength is made perfect. What I want to do this morning, now that I feel in my heart of hearts that we all have a general understanding and agreement on the fact that God does indeed work all things for our good, yes? And because of that, according to what the Apostle Paul is saying, then yes, we should therefore live our lives as a living sacrifice. Do we all agree on that point? Is that yes? Okay. The question is, how do we do it? How do we do it? Can I show you a few ways to do it? Is that all right? One person said yes. I don't know why y'all came, but I'm going to talk to that one person. Here's how we do it. Here's the first thing that I want to bring to your attention. If you're going to live your life as a living sacrifice, it requires that we walk in humility and stay on the altar. Stay. You ever done one of these to God? God, you can have all of me. He said, just all of me. And you're like, okay, I'll give you a little more. I'm not putting my leg up there, but you get the point. But God is asking for all, not partial. He says, offer your bodies as a living sacrifice, holy and pleasing to God. This is your true and proper worship. I don't know if you know this or not, or you've ever had the opportunity to really consider this, but your life is worship. Your life is worship. Your thoughts are worship. Your habits are worship. Your desires are worship. Your tendencies are worship. You have the opportunity to live and worship. We respond to God working all things by walking humbly and staying on the altar. You know what that means for you and I? It means that the real pathway to walking in purpose first begins with surrender. You know, I get individuals, I talk to people and they're like, hey, I want to know what my God-given purpose is. And I go, great. What do you mean by that? Well, what does he want me to do with my life? What kind of future should I have? What kind of business should I open? How should I parent? And I go, hey, can we take those questions? And by the way, those are very good questions. Can we take those questions and lay them on the table just for a minute? Can we first talk about how you're living? Is your life a living sacrifice? Because if your life is not a living sacrifice, you might be potentially self-sabotaging the future that God has for you. So it begins there. It is the essence. It is the key that unlocks the door to everything that you want. It means that true worship isn't a song, it's a lifestyle. I would almost go as far as saying this. You worship less on a Sunday than you should be worshiping Monday through Saturday. Because if your life is worship, there's a lot more worship going on out there than there is in here. If your life is worship. I get hung up on this because you know what I love? Oh, man, I love me some Romans 8:28. Don't you love Romans 8:28? When I'm going through a hard time, I just want somebody to come in with a big old smile and be like, hey, listen, man, God works all things. And I'm like, that's right. I'm going to get my other job. The relationship is going to work out. But I want the purpose. Here's my problem. I want the purpose of Romans 8:28, but I don't want the posture of Romans 12:1. Oh, I want to feel like God works all things together for my good because I love him, but don't ask me to be a living sacrifice. Can he override that and just do it anyways? And the answer is, I don't know. I don't know. Anybody in here try to live Romans 8:28 without living out Romans 12:1? Did it work out? Doesn't work out that great. And God is saying this to us. The real essence of life is found when you make the decision to walk humbly and remain on the altar. The Apostle Paul doesn't just say that God works for us, right? He says this, your response is to give yourselves back to him, wholly, not partially, even when you don't understand. You ever had God impress something on your heart and you start asking clarifying questions? You go, well, what do you mean by that? And who do I talk to about that? And God's like, I'm not giving you any more of the details. Because if I gave you any more of the details, you'd try to change the plan. Can I talk to the parents in the room for a minute? You ever had one of these moments? You ready? You're going to do it because I told you. Oh, no? Oh, no? No parents in here, right? Y'all are like, well, let me explain it to you, and then you're going to do what? No, you're like, there's a point that you go, listen, I'm not trying to explain it anymore. You just got to do it because I said it. It's not no honest parents in NorthRockChurch this morning. Okay. Every once in a while, God's like this. Listen, Abraham, you're going to go that way. What's over there? Don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. If I told you, you might be intimidated and not go. If I told you, you wouldn't trust me to the depth of trust that I need you to have for the future that I have for you. Every once in a while, the hardest point of surrender, the hardest point of staying on the altar is when we don't have all the information. And this is the beauty of it. If we really believe that God works all things for our good, then I can just say this to the Lord, Lord, I don't need to know it all. Because here's what I do know. Whether it's a high moment or a low moment, whether it's a moment of chaos or a moment of clarity, the truth is, it doesn't really matter what it is because you work all things, so yes. So yes, I will remain on the altar. I want you to consider something this morning. Is there an area in your life that you have taken off the altar that at one time you had given to God? You know what you couldn't do in the Old Testament when you were giving a sacrifice? You couldn't come up to the priest and go, oh, wait, I'm sorry. Hey, can I get that little piece of the lamb back? It doesn't work that way. It's all of it. All of it was consumed. Has he consumed all of you? Have you given him enough room to do so? Here's another question for you this morning. What area still feels like it's yours and not fully surrendered? You know what I have found in my experience? That when we have areas that we haven't fully surrendered to God, it's because we've only given God access. Can I talk about this for a minute? God doesn't just want access to your life. I give access to the people that come deliver packages to my house. You can come in. Yeah. No, put it right there. Don't touch nothing else. Don't move nothing. I don't want to hear what color paint you want on the walls. I don't care if you don't like what I have on TV. Why? It's my house. I just gave you access. God is not asking for access. If you're only giving God access, what ends up happening is that you pick up what you once laid down. Because there's a difference between access and ownership. God doesn't want access, God wants ownership. When you open your heart to him, God wants to be able to walk in that heart and go, change that, add this, remove that. Why? Because he has ownership. What areas have you only given him access, but you haven't given him ownership? He's not the decision maker. He only makes suggestions. Oh, okay, thank you. Yeah, I'll consider that. He wants ownership. Make a decision to give him ownership. Why do you want to give him ownership? Because there's a lot of things that begin on the spiritual altar. If the altar is where surrender begins, we're not after just surrender. What we're after is real life change. Real lasting transformation. You know when real lasting transformation happens? When we stop conforming to the world and start conforming to his word. But you know what it depends on? We cannot conform to his word if we're not walking in obedience. Which leads me to the second point, and it's this. Because he works all things for our good, and we're going to live as living sacrifices, then you and I this morning should make the decision to walk in obedience. Why? Because God is still speaking. He's still speaking. And if he's still speaking, it means that he's still giving us directions. I want to take you on a journey really quick. I want you to put yourself in a room with Jesus right now. In Jerusalem. In the upper room. During the Last Supper. In a moment where Jesus and the disciples are sitting on the floor in a triclinium. It's like a U-shaped table sitting. By the way, every position meant something. Jesus would have been sitting in the position of highest honor. And Peter, you remember Peter? Peter, the one who when Jesus got up, and scripture says this, he removed his outer garments and began to wash the disciples' feet. He gets to Peter, and Peter says, no, Lord, you can't wash my feet. To which Jesus says, if I don't wash all of you, you have no part in me. Let me tell you where Peter was sitting. Peter would have been sitting closest to the door. You know what that position is? The position is of highest servanthood. It means it would have been Peter's responsibility to wash every guest's feet. And then he sees Jesus do that. And he becomes so offended. And in that moment, in that triclinium, guess who else is there? Judas. Judas. And in a moment of vulnerability, Jesus speaks to John and says, John, there's someone here that will betray me today. And he looks in the eyes of Judas, and I picture a look so piercing that it looked right to the depth of Judas's soul. And he says this to Judas, whatever you've purposed in your heart, go do it now. And in that intimate setting, after having heard what Jesus said, Judas gets up and leaves the room. Do you feel the tension that exists in that room? These are the disciples. At that point, 11 of them. And Jesus is preparing them for his departure. And Jesus says this to them. Let me remind you of the point that we're discussing right now. That if you and I are going to live as living sacrifices, that we have to walk in obedience because God is still speaking. Jesus looks at them and says this, John 14:15. If you love me, keep my commands. In that moment, Jesus looks at them and says this, if you love me, keep my commands. Can I remind you who he's talking to? People that had been walking with him for 3+ years. They didn't. It's not like the disciples attended one teaching of Jesus or saw one miracle. 3+ years of walking with Jesus, of watching him heal, of watching him teach, of watching him do things the world never imagined would be possible. And they are about to experience his absence, the grief of his death, which would lead to incredible confusion. And Jesus looks at them and says this, if you don't remember anything, remember this. The best thing that you could do as an expression of your love for me is to keep my commands. Not because I'm just trying to give you a set of rules, it's because I'm trying to teach you how we can build a lasting relationship. And here's the essence of what Jesus is telling them, that he's telling you and I today. If you love me, let your loyalty and devotion show up in how you live when I'm no longer physically standing before you. Can we be uncomfortably honest this morning? Is that okay? Is it okay to come to church and talk about what it means to live for the Lord? Is that okay? Let's be a little honest this morning. There are a lot of people that love hearing the truth, but resist following it. Can I dig a little deeper? Is that okay? Can we? Respectfully. It doesn't matter how many Bible verses I have highlighted in my Bible if I'm not living them. Doesn't matter. It's irrelevant. Might as well not even have a Bible. It doesn't matter how many promises I know in my heart if I'm not preparing myself to receive what God has for me. It doesn't matter. And it's almost like Jesus is looking at the disciples and saying, you're going to be real tempted to go out into the world and talk a lot and do very little. This is the Aubrey translation. Don't get it twisted. The best thing that you could do is obey my commands. Can I tell you something Jesus never said? It's quiet in here this morning. Can I tell you something Jesus never said? Jesus never said this. You ready? If you love me, quote me. Yeah, because you know what our mission is here? To inspire you to live the uncommon surrendered life that Jesus has called you to live. Not because it's easy. No, it's hard. And here's the beautiful thing about it. It's hard, but he doesn't leave us to our own strength. He helps us. And Jesus never said, if you love me, quote me. What he said is this, if you really love me, obey my commands. Let me tell you something about his commands. The directions of God are not restrictions. They're not restrictions. God isn't really just trying to limit us. Squeeze the life out of us. I can't do anything. I can't live. No. You know what he's trying to do? Lead you to the place that you want to be. That's what he's trying to do. And sometimes it means surrender and obedience. Let me show you something really quick. You know in John 14:15, where Jesus says, if you love me, obey my command. Did you know that the word obey in the Greek, which is what most of the New Testament was written in, means to guard, to treasure, and to preserve? I want to draw a mental picture for you. the word is so deep that it implies this, that I'm holding on to something that I love with so much strength that you have to pry it out of my hands. Can I rephrase the statement? Watch this. Jesus says this to them. If you love me, you will hold my values so close and so tight, and you'll do everything that you can to preserve them, that somebody will have to come and pry them out of your hands. That's what Jesus is saying. That's what it means to live in obedience. That's what it means to live surrendered. That is our proper response to Him working all things for our good. Here's what I want to do. Can I show you a man who almost missed what God had for him because the instructions offended him and they were different than his expectations? Anybody in here ever been a little offended by what God asked you to do? I ain't calling them. Crazy. They need to call me. I ain't apologizing. They need to apologize to me. I ain't giving nothing. No. What? Been offended by what God said. Better be real careful. Don't allow your offense to be a roadblock to what God is trying to do in your life. I'm gonna share a name here, and if you know the name and you're a Bible scholar, good for you. All of us other people, we're gonna learn together this morning, okay? Do you remember the general named Naaman? Stories found in 2 Kings. Naaman was a general who had leprosy, and he hears of a prophet named Elijah. And he says, if I make my way to Elisha's home, and Elisha prays for me, I'll be healed of my leprosy. And so what does he do? He makes his way to Elisha's house, knocks on Elisha's door. The door opens, and it's not Elisha. It's Elijah's servant. And the servant says this, the prophet of God, Elisha, acknowledges the fact that you have leprosy, and here's what he's asking you to do. He's asking you to bathe in the Jordan River 7 times. I'm sharing this story with you because the trap that you and I get into is that we only walk in obedience when we feel like we fully understand what God is asking us to do. And we rationalize disobedience. Don't rationalize your way out of God's blessing. And watch what happens. I want us to read the story. Let's go over to 2 Kings chapter 5, verse 11. Naaman got so offended and so upset, number one, that Elisha didn't come down, and secondly, that the request was for him to bathe himself in the Jordan. And look at what happens. 2 Kings chapter 5. Did I give you a verse already? Verse 11. It says this. But Naaman went away angry and said, I thought that he would surely come out to me and stand and call on the name of his God. Problem number one. His God. Ain't your God, his God. Where am I here? Call on the name, stand and call on the name of his God. Wave his hand over the spot and cure me of my leprosy. And then he becomes so upset that he starts rationalizing disobedience. And he's like, I mean, there's like at least 3 rivers from where I'm from that are way better than this one. That's what he says. Look at it. I try to read them, but I'm going to mess them up. You ever got into a place in the Bible that you look at a name and you go, it just ain't got it. It just ain't got it. It happens to everyone. Are not Abana and Pharpar, the rivers of Damascus, better than all the waters of Israel? Couldn't I wash in them and be cleansed? So he turned and went off in a rage. He was so mad. How dare he ask me to bathe in the river Jordan? And he was refusing to be obedient to what God had asked him to do. And this is the point of tension for you and I, because sometimes, somebody say sometimes. Sometimes the turning point you're praying for is hidden in the obedience that you're resisting. God's like, I'm trying to change course, but in order for me to change course, you got to be willing. And you got to say yes. And here's what happens eventually. The servant comes up next to Naaman and goes, sir, if he would have asked you to do something much harder, would you not have said yes? And Naaman goes, yeah, surely right. And he walks over to the Jordan, and he dips in the Jordan 7 times. And on the 7th time, he comes out of the water, cleansed from leprosy. Here's a question for you. What has God asked you to do that you haven't done yet? What is it? You're still waiting. The real question is not what he's asked you to do. The real question becomes, why haven't you done it? I know that for me, the moments where I resist obedience is because I'm still trying to negotiate with God. Any negotiators in here? Just negotiate with God. Lord, I'll do it, but. And God's like, oh, really? Well, that ain't going to work with me. I want to encourage you this week to consider the things that you have been resisting to surrender. And the yes you have been withholding from God. And make the decision to fully surrender to Him. Now, here's what we've said so far. So far, we've said that if we're going to live as a living sacrifice, as a response to God's goodness, then number one, we have to walk in humility, yes? Secondly, we have to walk in obedience because He's still speaking. And thirdly, here's what we have to do. We have to walk in alignment because His purpose is still greater. Something happens when we move from the point of surrender to the point of obedience, even when things are hard and require humility. Here's what I would tell you about obedience. You know what obedience does? Obedience tunes your heart to the voice of God. That's what it does. Okay, God, I'm listening to you. Okay, God, I'm hearing you. Okay, God, I understand what you're wooing inside of me to do. I'm in tune with your voice. If obedience tunes your heart to God's voice, alignment tunes your steps to His will. You've heard it, you feel it, you sense it, you do it, now you're walking in His will. You go, well, that sounds really good. Where do you get that from? Good question. Can we go back to Romans 12:1 really quick? Is that okay? Let's go over to Romans 12:1 really quick. This time what I want us to do is I want us to read Romans 12:1, but I want to bring in another verse. Can we read Romans 12:1 and 2? Is that okay? Let's do it. Watch what's happening here. Romans 12:1 begins with this. Therefore. We already know what the therefore is for, right? His mercy, His grace, His sovereignty. Therefore, I urge you, brothers and sisters, in view of God's mercy, to offer your bodies as living sacrifices, holy and pleasing to God, because this is your true and proper worship. Be careful now. He gives us a little instruction. Do not conform to the pattern of this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. Because of everything that I told you about God, and because the fact that God works all things together for your good, offer yourself as a living sacrifice. Be real careful, because the world will tell you that you're out of your mind. It'll want you to conform to it instead of you conforming to Him. But if you make the decision to conform to Him and walk in alignment because His purpose is greater, watch what happens. Then, not before, after you've made the decision, then you will be able to test and approve what God's will is. His good, pleasing, and perfect will. Then, after you've made the decision to surrender your life as a living sacrifice, after you've made the decision to embrace His ways, then, because your mind has clarity and your soul has clarity, then you'll be able to say, that's God's will for my life. His good will and His pleasing will. Let me tell you this about Jesus. When you come to Jesus and you surrender your life to Him, you surrender your life to God, God isn't trying to just fix your life. He's trying to form your life. Form your life. It's in the same way that somebody has an injury and they go to physical therapy. The goal isn't for the damage to be repaired. The goal is for you to have full function eventually if it's possible. God's the same way. Come to me and surrender your life to me. And yes, I'll fix some things, but I'm not really trying to fix you. I'm trying to form you. I want you to be different. Because here's what the world will say. Ready? Oh man, just follow your heart. Anybody in here got in trouble with that advice? Follow your heart. You go, I ain't following that thing no more. Oh, just do you. Anybody got in trouble doing that? That didn't play. Doesn't work well. I've seen that movie. I don't want to watch it again. But God says this, forget about your will just for a second. Forget about you doing you for a minute. Come to me and surrender. Because if you come to me and surrender, you'll be transformed. If you come to me and surrender, you'll be renewed. Because when we walk in alignment with God, God moves us towards a greater purpose. Let me close with a few final thoughts for you. I want you to take real deep inventory. Because alignment is a big deal. Sometimes what happens to us is we ask God to bless a path He never called us to walk in the first place. This is a good point of inspection for you. Lord, am I walking down a path that you never called me to walk in, and then asking you to bless it? And here's what I love about God. If you're walking down the wrong path, He can realign you to the right one. But it requires the right posture. The right posture, the right state of mind. We know that God is working all things for you and I. All things for our good. And the best thing that you could do is to respond to that with surrender. Daily. On Monday, on Tuesday, on Wednesday, on Thursday, every single day of the week. You've seen too much of His goodness to not do so. Too much. Our response, after knowing what we know now, is to go and live it out. I hope that during this message, you have been considering how you can do that. I want to pray for you this morning. I want to ask you to bow your heads and close your eyes just for a second. Number one, if you've never surrendered your life to Jesus, then you can't walk it out. If you've never surrendered your life to Him, you have an opportunity to do that today. To fully surrender. Those of us that are in this room, we're living as partial sacrifices. Reserving a little bit for ourselves. And today in the middle of this message, you've recognized that God is not asking you to partially surrender. He's asking you to fully surrender. Because when you fully surrender, the very thing you've been hoping for becomes attainable. So if you're in here and you've never surrendered your life to Jesus, I want to pray with you. And if you've been distant and you're ready to draw near, I want to pray with you also. If you're any one of those two people, heads are bowed, eyes are closed, I'm going to ask you to courageously just raise your hand in the air so that I know who I'm praying with. Amen. Now let's pray this prayer together. Say, Jesus, today I make the decision to surrender my life to you. I believe that you died on a cross and that you rose again to forgive me of my sins and to make a way for me to live in eternity with you. Because of you, I am saved. Come on, let's honor Him this morning. I want to invite you to stand to your feet with me. I have a declaration that I'd like for us to close with. We're going to put it up on the screen. And after we read this declaration, I want to have an opportunity to bless you, because we finish every service with a blessing that God gave the nation of Israel found in Numbers chapter 6. I want us to say this bravely, courageously, and with conviction. Are you guys ready? Let's do it. I will walk in surrender because He's worthy of all of me. I will walk in obedience because He's still speaking. I will walk in alignment because His purpose is greater than mine. I will not be conformed to this world. I will be transformed by the renewing of my mind. I won't just hear the word, come on, I will live it. Because He works in all things. Amen. Come on, let's honor Him this morning. Let me bless you before we dismiss. May the Lord bless you and keep you. May the Lord make His face shine upon you and be gracious unto you. May He lift up His countenance upon you and give you peace. And may He cover you with His precious name, Jesus. God bless you, church. We love you. See you next week.